This particular video that you're going to watch is going to deal with the ultimate issue in just about every disability insurance case, and that is it the disability insurance claim rep that's making the decision that the person's disabled, or is it the doctor that's hired by the disability insurance company that's making the decision? And also we're going to take a look at, is there any bias of the doctor that's hired by the insurance company to evaluate the claim? Now in this particular case, we learned that Dr. Dickerman, the doctor hired by Standard Insurance Company, was paid by Standard $577,000 over an approximately 2-year period. We think that's obviously a bias, but not only is that a bias, but what happens when the disability insurance claim rep relies on that physician's opinion? So in the first clip, we're going to look at the claim rep who made the decision. In the second clip, we're going to look at what I call the snowball effect, when the disability insurance claim rep then took the opinions of Dr. Dickerman and asked the vocational rehabilitation counselor to make an opinion as to whether or not our physician could do his job or not. So let's take a look at the video.
Did you come to the final conclusion that the doctor has no restrictions and limitations that prevent him from performing the material duties of his occupation?
Based on all the information in the file, I did come to that conclusion.
And as you stated before, since you're not a physician, did you rely on the opinion of Dr. Dickerman stating that the doctor had no restrictions and limitations?
Yes.
Object to the form.
How do you, as a claims specialist, decipher between the opinions of Dr. Dickerman stating no restrictions and limitations and the opinions of any of the doctor's treating physicians stating that he has restrictions and limitations?
Object to the form.
We do consider all the information in the file, and as I recall, in this particular case, his physician, the one accommodation that they recommended was use of lumbar support or some sort of orthotic. So we do consider, I did consider the recommendations of his physician. Dr. Dickerman indicated that that would be a reasonable accommodation.
But if you have no medical training, how can you say whether or not the doctors are correct in telling him that he should limit the amount of surgeries that he performs versus Dr. Dickerman saying there's no restrictions and limitations on Dr.
Object to the form.
Again, we have a physician consultant, who reviews that information, and
Steve, what's great about this video is that it gives people the opportunity to have an inside look as to what happens when you really ask a claims examiner, how did you decide to just rely on your own doctor versus the treating doctor? And I think it really shows the importance to people who are watching this video and seeing firsthand what a claim rep, what a claim person from the company goes through, that you really got to have all your ducks in a row. And by that I mean you really got to have strong medical support from the doctor. If you're a claimant, you got to regularly treat with a doctor and really even go further with your treatment than you ordinarily would, because the insurance company is making you live up to this very high standard of medical care that's their standard, not necessarily the accepted standard in the community. I mean, this, and then we heard about this relationship with Dr. Dickerman. Is this something that you see, not only necessarily in this case, but have you seen this with other insurance companies?
You do see it, especially sometimes certain claims persons may keep using the same doctors over and over, so the names, when you get the claim files, they become familiar to you, because it's a go-to. It's a person they know what they're going to expect the work product will be, and it's someone that they can hang their hat on in trying to deny the claim.
What troubles me as well is that, you heard the claim rep said, I made the final decision. But the claim rep doesn't really have any medical training. I think this particular claim rep was an attorney. So how does the claim rep, how does that claim rep who has no medical background be able to determine whether her doctor's right or the treating doctors are right?
The only logical way they can determine who's right is they're just going to rely on the doctor they want to use. Obviously, you can tell doesn't know much about any of the medical condition whatsoever. So even though she's claiming she makes the final decision, it's based solely on what the doctor she just hired tells her.
All right, so, I'm glad that, we have this video and that people can just see firsthand what they may be up against. But, someone who's watching shouldn't feel like, oh my God, this company's going to do this every time or something like that, because it's not like that. And the doctor, we can't say whether this particular doctor, in this case, every single time finds the person not disabled. We don't know. That's something we would never know. But you really got to have your file prepared. But what's frustrating is that we're going to watch another clip right now where the claim rep took the opinions from the hired doctor, Dr. Dickerman, and then went to a vocational rehabilitation counselor. And we know that's the person who looks at the whole file, or is supposed to look at the whole file, not just what their own doctor said, and say, okay, based upon these restrictions and limitations as given by the physicians, here's the types of jobs that you may be able to do. Well, in this case, for whatever reason, the claim rep only gave the vocational rehabilitation counselor the opinions of their own doctor. And so it's interesting to see what the vocational rehabilitation person says about why she only looked at that doctor. So let's take a look at this clip.
Aren't you trained to have the total medical picture of the claimant as opposed to one doctor's opinion regarding a person's ability to do their occupation?
Object to the form.
Well, I'm not trained to diagnose conditions and determine people's limitations and restrictions from conditions. No, I do have training overall on various disabilities, but I'm not a medical professional and I'm not trained to determine what a person is limited, how they're limited from that condition.
Well, how do you feel you can render an opinion if you only have one doctor's opinion on restrictions and limitations, where there may be 2 or 3 other doctors that have opinions on restrictions and limitations, yet you've only been given one doctor?
Object to the form.
There might be tons of doctors in a particular claim file. It's not my role to go through all of that.
Even though Jen Baker gave you those documents, you don't feel you have a duty as a vocational counselor to take a look at all of the restrictions and limitations that were presented to you?
I do have a duty
Object to the
to
form.
review that, but as far as what we're considering, there was nothing else aside from Dr. Dickerman's memo.
So it's your position, as you testify here today, that you didn't have any other medical restrictions and limitations in your possession when you evaluated this claim other than those stated by Dr. Dickerman?
Object to the form.
I had limitations and restrictions that I was asked to consider, which was Dr. Dickerman's.
How can she render an opinion as to the person's ability to work when the only thing she knows medically about it is the hired doctor who says nothing's wrong? Completely ignores everything that the treating physicians have to say. It's kind of scary.
Well, I don't even think it was that she ignored him. She didn't even look at it. She's like, yeah, I had the whole file. There could have been tons of doctors, but I only looked at Dr. Dickerman. What I don't understand is why didn't she go ahead and say back to the claim rep, hey, I only have Dr. Dickerman here. I know there's a whole big file. What'd the other doctors say? Yet she just, almost like robotic, just accepted the fact to say, well, this is what Dr. Dickerman said, so I guess there's nothing wrong. And I just don't think that was the way that the situation should have been handled.
Definitely not. It should have been taken as a whole. If it's their job to, look out for their insured and be able to really fairly evaluate the claim like they claim they always do, then you have to look at everything as a whole.
Right, and I think you could see that frustration in her when she's, even answering the questions that we were giving her. So, if other people have encountered this situation or they're worried about these things, there are things that can be done to try to protect yourself in your claim. I think that what claimants really need to do is they need to document their files as good as possible and continue to get the treatment which is going to show that you have a disabling condition, and even more so than your doctor may recommend, because the insurance company is going to make you live up to this high threshold. So if you've had a similar experience with any company or you have questions about your claim, feel free to call us and we'll be happy to provide you with any advice that we can.